Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome back to day 2 of the national webinar on intellectual property rights and its application. We are joined today by Dr. Victor Vaibhav Tandon and Dr. S.R. Joshi. We warmly welcome both of them. And we also extend a warm welcome to all of our participants who've joined in. By the way, to Dr. Tandon and to Dr. Joshi, our participants have joined in from in and around the country. And we're very happy to see you again. A very warm good morning to all of you. We will begin the session very shortly, but before that, I'd like to invite Mr. Freddie Lamare, the head of the Department of Zoology, to kindly give his welcome speech.
Hello.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Hello. Can you hear me, Amanda?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
yeah, you're audible. You're audible. Yeah.
Okay. My video doesn't seem to be working. Thank God for this wonderful morning. It's been a wonderful day since the day we got up. It's been good to us. Bless the college, bless the Department of Zoology and everyone. And it's a wonderful day to get back together after yesterday's first 2 sessions that we are going to have a good day today too. First of all, let me welcome each and every one of you. Glad to welcome 2 professors. One is the first speaker for today is Dr. Victor, but also a professor. And also I would like to welcome Professor S.R. Joshi from the Department of Biotechnology and Bioinformatics, who happen to also be a colleague once upon a time to this webinar. I also would like to welcome all the other people who are organizing this seminar. My friends from the IQAC, Dr. Sir Karumnoy, and also Dr. Daman, Nathaniel, and Amanda, who's hosting the show. I won't be taking much time. All I have to say is that speakers of the day today will help us to understand much more on what IPR is all about, especially in relation to the particular topics that have been assigned to them, in which they will be explaining to us and helping us to understand the nuances of IPR. With these few words, once again, I welcome each and every one of you all to this webinar organized by the Department of Zoology and the IQAC of St. Anthony's College, Shillong. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. All right. Without further delay, let us move on to the first speaker for today's session, Dr. Victor Vaibhav Tandon. It is my pleasure to introduce him. Dr. Tandon completed his PhD in patent law from the Faculty of Law, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi, a registered patent agent, Government of India. Dr. Tandon is currently a senior associate at Sai Krishna and Associates, one of the top IPR firms located in New Delhi. Sir, I'm assuming you're in Delhi at the moment?
Yeah.
a warm welcome. I know how chilly it must be there as well. So from one recipient of, chilly winters to another, a very, very warm welcome. Greetings from Shillong and greetings from St. Anthony's. And sir, I think without further delay, I hand over the rest of the session to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll just start my screen share. All right. So, good morning, everybody. And I'm going to speak primarily on patents. And I will be touching upon briefly in the beginning as to what IPRs are and some of the characteristics. Like IPR is an umbrella term, and patents are a kind of IPR. So many characteristics of patents are generally shared by the whole bunch of different kinds of intellectual property rights that we have. And before I start on patents specifically, I'll just take you through an overview of what exactly patents are, how the process of granting a patent, the criteria of grant of patents. There are a few things that, few myths rather, that I would be talking about in the first couple of slides. This is based on my experience of speaking at various places and interacting with students, interacting with faculty members. There are a few myths which are there. I'm sure most of you would already know some of the facts, but I will still indulge in this exercise for the benefit of those who are probably not deeply aware of what patent law is. So,
Dr. Tandon, I'm so sorry to interrupt, sir, but can you put on your video?
yeah, I'll just do that. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. Am I visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Am I still visible?
Yes, sir, you are, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you. Actually, I just have my screen in front of me, so I can't see the whole panel. So you can just prompt me in between if my voice or my video goes.
Absolutely, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So minor adjustments, I guess, we have to make for these virtual sessions. Coming back to what I was talking about, there are a few myths which are prevalent, and I'll touch upon some of them. And one of the first things that comes to my mind is that many people tend to think that you can have something like a universal patent or a global patent or an international patent, or just because I apply in one country or in one, say, WIPO or the IP Bureau of WIPO, I will get a universal patent. That is not true. There is no such thing as a global patent, for the simple reason that these patents are territorial rights. They are granted from country to country. So if I apply, for example, for a patent in India and USA and Russia, I'm only going to get protection in these three countries. And but there is something called an international application, which is a process under an international treaty by the name of PCT, which is the Patent Cooperation Treaty. But that would be a slightly high level concept, which I don't think I would be dwelling upon much today. But just for the sake of clarity, the simplest concept is that all these patent rights are territorial, and even if you file an international application under PCT, and the national phase subsequently, that international application, whether to grant a patent or not, that question will be determined by the national offices of the concerned jurisdiction. So number one. Number two, can you simply get a patent by filing an application, or by, for example, if a patent is published on LinkedIn, on social media, I see a lot of posts where patent applications are published and people highlight it as an achievement. But the only problem is that just because you have filed a patent, or just because your patent application is published, it does not mean that you will have a granted patent eventually. Because as I will explain in the PPT, there is a whole process of filing, publication, examination, whole process of how a patent application is granted, which takes in the normal course around 2 to 3 years of time. Now, the third most important myth, which is something very, very close to my heart, is that a lot of people think that just because you have more number of patents or you keep filing more patents, it necessarily means that you are a more innovative society. That is not true again. Patents are just one of the index, one of the different metrics which can indicate perhaps that yes, good research is happening, but quantity is different from quality of patents. And likewise, for becoming an innovative society, for having a culture of innovation, for becoming a research-based society, there are different other things also apart from a robust patent system which are required. So for example, you will need to have adequate research funding or open science, collaborative science projects, a conducive environment, respect for researchers and research, and a culture of innovation, perhaps support from the government also. And all of these factors together, along with the patent system, they propel the society towards innovation. And another myth, which I think I briefly touched upon in the last point also, is that once your patent is granted, that's the end of the journey, or that patent grant is sacrosanct. Your patent cannot be revoked, and your patent is just going to stay and it will earn something for you. That is also wrong. Two things. First of all, as I said, quality is more important than quantity. So even if you have a granted patent at a later stage, the life of a patent is 20 years. So between that 20 years time, at any stage, your patent can be revoked also. It can be taken back by the government for the simple reason that the government or the granting authority, the IP office, it will find that your patent is perhaps not rightly granted, is lacking quality, should be revoked. It was wrongly granted to you in the first place. So number one. And number two, even if you have a successful patent, it has a very good quality, but to maintain that patent every year, you have to pay a particular sum of money to the IP office. And so basically, it's like a membership of a club. I have to give membership fees every year just to sustain that patent, granted patent. So if you have just got a patent, you are not commercializing it, you are not selling it to the industry, you are not entering into licensing agreements with the industry, it is of no use. You just have a piece of paper. It's like having a degree and not having a job. So you have a patent and you pay the renewal fees every year to maintain that patent, but you also have to commercialize the patent. And this is another aspect. And lastly, this is one great myth, especially in the younger generation, which I find in today's students. There's a feeling that patent is just to reward the innovators. And this is a slightly jurisprudential concept, but rest assured, patent law is a very finely balanced set of legal instrument law to ensure that you reward the innovators, and also that from whatever technology is patented, there is benefit to the society. Ultimately, all inventions, all patents, they have to benefit the society. So just because I have this monopoly right of patent does not mean that I can stop others from exploiting it, using it after my approval. It is my monopoly right. I'll explain that in a while. But the fruits of my patented invention should reach the society. And this was some of the myths, and I wanted to shed light on and introduce some facts. Now, some of these points will become clear when I actually tell you what is a patent. I understand that some of it, especially for people who are not from a science background, perhaps might be a bit confusing, but I will try to elaborate upon some of these points when I tell you what exactly a patent is. And before I do that, and this is a very, very sobering figure, so as to say, something that should all make us ponder. I was looking at the annual report of the IP Office of Government of India, our country. The IP Office annual report, it was available till 2019, 31st March 2019. And these are the statistics I could cull out. And in our country, as of now, as of 31st March 2019, there are only 64,686, as you can see on your screens, patents which are in force. And out of that, only 9,700 something patents are held by Indians, which is just 15.13%. Now, for all our schemes, Startup India, Make in India, and Innovate India, IP policy 2016. We had an IPR policy since 2016. We have all these IP laws. But this is a very sobering statistic. And there is a considerable room for improvement, because today, as per government data, there are only 15% of the patents are held by Indians. So we need to perhaps reconsider, rethink our research strategies, and also go for applying for more patents, both at the university level, at the industry level, at the grassroots levels, at the startup levels. And if you think that the situation is going to improve anytime soon, well, for the same year, 50,000 applications were filed, and only 17,000 of those applications were by Indians. So even in the near future, in the next 2 to 3 years, the data is going to be quite sobering. And this is another statistics. So this is a year by year, how many patents were granted and how many applications were filed in India, total and by Indians. So again, the same thing you can see is that year by year, although there are improvements, but still the proportion, the percentage of filings and the percentage of grants to Indians as a percentage of the total is quite low. And this should perhaps propel us, this should motivate us to perhaps improve this figure and file more patents, more quality patents, and get more grants. And this is how we compare to the rest of the world. So I have data till 2018, and these are the number of filings in China, USA, Japan, and Germany. As you can easily make out, China and USA have in lakhs. We had somewhere around 60,000. Even Japan has in lakhs. So this is where there is considerable room for improvement for our country as a whole, for each one of us rather. And this is also a fact that I can share from my practical experience. A lot of litigations, because being a lawyer, that is what we do, we fight cases. A lot of our litigations, we have foreign clients. Now they pay well, but at the end of this day, you do ponder that what is the benefit of this patent system to India? Because Indians are hardly using this. And this we can skip. This is what a patent certificate looks like, much like our degrees. As I said, a patent is like a degree. If you don't commercialize it, it's as good as you're having a degree and you're jobless. This is exactly the patent certificate granted by Government of India, Intellectual Property Office, India. I just thought that I would share this sample with you. And this is what a patent bibliographic information looks like. So you have something called the patent number on your screen, you can see, then an application number. So this patent was filed in 2013 and it was granted in 2020. So about 7 years. Generally, the average time is 2 to 3 years for a patent to be granted, but it can be more also. And I'll explain that process, why it can be more. And this is the title of the invention, plunger type side inlet valve for cisterns. It was basically for those in the washrooms that you use, the toilet systems. So this is about the patent bibliography information. This is an international PCT application. It will not result in an international patent because you will be filing in, you'll be going to the designated states, all the codes that you can see at point number 81. So then those national offices will decide whether to grant a patent or not. But this is what a PCT application looks like. And this is a US patent. You can see the name of the inventors at point number 75, the patent number, date of patent, it's an old patent, and assignees. So inventors are the people who invent, of course, and assignees are the people, like, for example, if Professor Lamare does some research, or Professor Joshi does some research, but he files through the university. I think Professor Joshi comes from NEHU. So NEHU would be the owner. Assignee is the owner. Inventor would be Dr. Joshi. So this was a brief kind of introduction background to my real work today. So now I have tried to give you a brief background, that by breaking certain myths, showed you some statistics about patenting in India, what a patent actually looks like, the difference between an application, patent application, and a granted patent certificate. And now we come to the real meat of this presentation, so as to say, that there are 7 kinds of intellectual property rights. So all of these different kinds of IPRs, they share certain common characteristics, in the sense that they are property rights, and they are property rights over creations of human intellect, property and human intellect, hence intellectual property rights. I'm sure yesterday you were must have been told in detail about IPR, so I won't dwell too much into defining this. But there are 7 different kinds of IPRs, as you can see on your screens. And patents, 1. Second, trademarks, copyrights, geographical indications, industrial designs, layout designs for integrated circuits, and trade secrets. Now, all these categories of IPRs, they are granted over different subject matters. So, for example, when you write a novel, when you write a book, or when you write a thesis, that is a domain of copyright law. When you have a brand name or a logo, that is the domain of trademarks. When you have an invention, that is a domain of patents, and so on and so forth. Now, coming to what exactly patents are. So as you can see this chart in front of your screens, a patent is basically a techno-legal document. A legal document because it is like your property deed. You buy a property, you get a certificate, you get a lease deed, you get an ownership document. So that exactly is what a patent is. It's a piece of paper that shows that you have ownership of an invention. So it is a legal document, but also a techno-legal document because it covers an invention, a technology. It's a monopoly. So for 20 years, that is the period of a patent, only you can use or exploit that invention, or others can use it, exploit it with your permission. If I don't have permission to use, for example, Dr. Joshi's invention, and I continue to use it, Dr. Joshi can come and sue me. He can injunct me. He can ask me for damages, monetary compensation. He can stop my use of it. I will have to take permission from Dr. Joshi. It is a statutory right in the sense that we have a Patent Act of 1970, which grants you a patent. If that Patent Act is gone, you will not get a patent. It's a statutory right. Statutory right means that these are not natural rights or human rights. They are rights because a statute, a law in India has granted you a patent. And it's a kind of IPR, of course, I've already told that. It's a territorial right again. So it will be granted in a particular country in which you apply, as per the laws of that country. It's a temporal right. Temporal means time. So it is granted from the date of filing for a period of 20 years, counted from the date of filing, not from the date of grant. If I file an application, say, for example, 1st January 2008, my patent term will be 2028, 1st January 2028. Now, it's a right with exceptions that need not bother us today for our brief introduction to what patents are. And this slide perhaps captures the sense of what the diagram was all about. So you have patents which are granted over inventions, of course, and it's a statutory monopoly which is granted to innovators by the government. in return for disclosure of the invention and for investing their time, money, and labor. So we are, suppose Dr. Joshi comes up with a, I'm sorry, I'm using his name again and again, but I believe he's doing some wonderful research in the area of biotechnology. So if Dr. Joshi comes up with an invention, we want to honor him, we want to reward him for that particular invention, for his intellectual labor, for investing his time, money. Alongside that, we also want society to reap its benefits, because the moment a new invention comes, but for example, the invention of steam engine or printing press led to the whole advent of Western science, industrial revolution. So the moment a new invention comes, some of them are so path-breaking, they give rise to entire industries. One invention, I get a patent over that, I can exclusively use that, I license that, there's a whole industry which can start. And that industry will give jobs to people. When people have jobs, their living standards improve. And this is how your socio-economic development depends on innovation, depends on protecting that innovation, so that somebody from, say, US or some foreign company is not able to exploit your invention without your permission, without paying you royalties. This is a very the whole umbrella of what patent system does. One person gets a patent and can have the potential for developing an entire industry, make money out of it, commercialize it, create jobs, introduce that technology into society, and others can use this as a building block of their own innovation for follow-up innovation. So somebody does 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, other person comes, does 4 plus 4 is equal to 8, and that is how your knowledge grows. So I think you must have read or seen this slide, so I'll move on to the next one. Now, this is something technical. So there are different kinds of patent applications. The normal application is the national application under section 7 and 10. We can perhaps skip this detail for the current audience. Now, who can apply? So, of course, as I was giving example of Dr. Joshi, so the true and first inventor. So Dr. Joshi invents something. He can be the applicant. Inventor can be the applicant. And if not that, then suppose Dr. Joshi is under a contract with the university, NEHU. Then NEHU would be the applicant, the assignee and the applicant. And Dr. Joshi would be only named as an inventor. Now, if some person was supposed to apply for a patent, suppose I wanted to get an invention patented, and I die. So my children, my legal representatives, they can apply for the patent in my name. That is allowed. So now this is something very important. And the example which I use generally for my students, which I think I can perhaps use here also. How do you get a degree? I compared the patent certificate to a degree. So you have to fulfill certain qualifications. You have to be eligible. Say, for example, you have to be minimum 18 years of age to sit in the exam. And then you need to have minimum passing marks. There are criteria of grant of a degree. Likewise, there are criteria of grant of a patent. And in the world of patent, there are 5 such criteria, which you can see on your screen. Novelty, inventive step, industrial applicability, eligibility, and disclosure or written description. Now, eligibility is something which is critical, the 4th criteria I'm talking about. As I said, you might be very good, you might be an Einstein, you might be the best, the greatest. But if the examination says that you have to be minimum 18 years of age and your age is 16, you are disqualified, you're not eligible. Likewise, under our patent law in India, we have something called an eligibility bar, which is present in section 3 and section 4. So no matter how good your invention is, how inventive it is, you will not get a patent because you are not eligible. Number 1, I'll share some of these points as to what are eligibility bars. Number 2, disclosure or written description. this is your examination answer sheet. So when you file a patent, it's a whole bunch of documents. They're around 20, 30 pages or maybe 100 pages sometimes. So you file a written specification, pieces of paper, you submit it online or offline in the physical form, because that answer sheet, that patent application is what the examiner in the patent office is going to read and judge your invention on the basis of that. Now, these are two, the number 4, number 5 criteria that I just talked about. The first 3 are actually the main patentability criteria: novelty, inventive step, and industrial applicability. We'll just come to that now. So, I mean, you can not bother so much about the technical jargon on your screens, the legal jargon. But so basically, in a sense, what is novelty? Novelty, as you can understand, something new, something which has never been done before, something which is not published, something which is unheard of, something which has not been used or done by anybody before. This is the first criteria. Your invention has to be new. It has not been published. It is also called anticipation. So if your novel is anticipated, that means it has lost its novelty. So how can you get anticipation? By prior publication, prior oral knowledge, prior use. You can forget about the prior claiming part. That's, I mean, not relevant right now. Maybe somebody has a question, you can ask me that later. But so these are the criteria: something which is not published, something which is not known, something which is not used, is novel, is new. First criteria. This I think we can just skip for the time being. Now, second is inventive step. Now, something is new. How new it is? Is it obvious? So, for example, Dr. Joshi's student in biotechnology comes up with a very, very novel, new, unique concept. And he approaches Dr. Joshi. But Dr. Joshi says, yes, what you have done is new, but anybody could have come up with it. Because Dr. Joshi would be speaking from experience. He's a person skilled in the art, somebody who belongs to that field, somebody who understands that field. That person skilled in the art, who probably has an MSc or PhD in that area, they will judge and they will say, yes, your invention is new, but anybody could have thought of it. So this very loosely defined criteria is called inventive step. Is your invention obvious to a person skilled in the art, or is it not obvious? If it is obvious to a person skilled in the art, your invention lacks inventive step. I mean, I don't want to go into too much technical details because I was told that there are a lot of students from and professors from non-science background. But inventive step is a slightly technical criteria. There are a lot of judiciary determined rules for the same. And perhaps if some technical people have questions on this, I can answer them in detail later on. And so industrial applicability, this is the simplest criteria. Anything which can be used or made in an industry, that has industrial applicability. And industry can be anything: agricultural industry, food industry, biotechnology, biochemistry, computer industry, anything. And so this is what I was talking about, eligibility bars. I'll not take you, there are a whole set of guidelines for this. As you can see, I just scrolled the screen for your benefit. I'll not, of course, bore you with the whole of it. It's a very technical thing. But rest assured, for example, anything which is contrary to natural laws, you cannot have a patent over that. So for example, I say that I will have a perpetual motion machine, something which will never stop, a machine which never stops. This is not possible. Physics says this is not possible. What I'm talking about is a kind of impossibility. So I will not get a patent. You cannot get patent over magical inventions, jadoo, magic. No, there won't be any patent. And so, for example, another example that I give: suppose I develop a machine which determines the gender of the baby in the womb and kills the baby as soon as it is of a particular gender. Now, this kind of a machine, you can say, oh, okay, great. I have Dr. Victor has a machine which can detect the gender of the baby in the womb and kill the baby if it is of a particular gender, as decided by the doctor or the patient. But in our society, it's prone to so much misuse, abuse. So on the basis of public order or morality clause, you will say that we will not patent this machine. We will not grant you a patent. We are not even considering it as an invention. So this is our public order and morality clause. These are one of the eligibility bars as to what kind of things we are not going to give you a patent on. Discoveries. I search a new planet. It was always there in nature. What has my contribution? I have just located something in nature. I have not invented it. So discoveries, there is no patent. Patent is for inventions. Another interesting thing which might be of use for some of you, traditional knowledge. I believe there was a session yesterday about this. So anything which is traditional knowledge, we will not grant you a patent over it. Why? Because it is already existing knowledge, something that a particular community had possessed for years, for generations. You can't just go and say, oh, I want to have a patent over neem, I want to have a patent over turmeric. No, you can't. Without adding something to it, you cannot have a patent over traditional knowledge. Now, this again, I have told you, I'll just tell you what the contents of specification are. So this is what your entire patent specification will look like. This is the format of your answer sheets, so as to say, this is the 5th criteria. You have a title, abstract, drawings, models, discussions, best method, claims. And the most important in this is your claims, which you can see as the 7th or 8th point on your screens. Claims. When I make an application for a patent to the patent office, I am basically asking the patent office that you give me an patent over my invention. Where do I describe my invention? Where is my invention? My invention primarily resides in the claims. This is like I demarcate, suppose this 100 square yards of plot belongs to Victor Webb of London. So you will describe it that this house piece of land surrounded by this, having this features belongs to Victor Webb of London. Likewise, in the world of inventions, in the world of patents, you will do this by way of claims. So we'll say, I claim so and so. And whatever you claim becomes your invention. That is what you are basically having a patent over. And another interesting aspect, there are some additional requirements for biotechnology related or biodiversity related inventions. Those 3 that you can see on your screen. I don't read from my PPT generally because I expect that as I speak, as I explain, you people are perhaps reading it or even making a screenshot of it. So this is something, the last 3 criteria. In the result, the reason for this is because of biopiracy. To combat biopiracy, I think suppose somebody was taking traditional knowledge lecture yesterday would have spoken about this. To prevent biopiracy, to ensure that our country benefits from use of our biological resources and traditional knowledge, we have these 3 criteria of disclosure of geographical origin of raw material, approval of National Biodiversity Authority under the Biological Diversity Act, and the deposit of the living organism or the biological material which is used in the invention under the Budapest Treaty in an IDA. IDA is an international depository authority. We have 2 of them in India, one in Chandigarh and one in Pune. So this is about the 5 criteria. So 5 criteria of grant of patents: novelty, inventive step, industrial applicability, patent eligibility, and a written specification, which we just discussed. Now, this is the granting procedure. I think we're nearing towards the end of our slides. Yeah, we are in time. So this is how long a procedure is. You file a patent application, it will be published. Then after that, it will be examined by the IP Office of India. After examination, there are certain processes. Finally, it will be granted. And the grant of the patent, that certificate you saw in the beginning of the slide, that will also be published. Now here two things are there. I'll not delve into it. These are hyper technical details perhaps. There are ways of challenging a patent, a pre-grant opposition and a post-grant opposition. So on your screens, that green pre-grant opposition and the last post-grant opposition, these are just ways of challenging a patent. In between, any of your competitors, any person interested, any opponent can come and challenge your patent. Pre-grant opposition is that at the application stage, the patent should not be granted. And post-grant opposition is that the patent which is granted is taken back or is cancelled by the government. And these are long procedures. We need not go into those. But just why I have shared this slide with you, and these are more detailed slides that I got from the IP office. There was a controller's presentation, so I took it from there. This is what happens. You conceptualize an invention, you file an application for it, and it undergoes publication, examination. It's a very complex process. This entire process, this is a simplistic representation of the same. So what happens is that it's a 2-year, 3-year long process. As I said in the beginning, just because I filed a patent does not mean that I will get a patent for sure. It will have to undergo all these checks, all these systems of different procedures before a final grant comes. And this is about it. So thank you. And now I think we can perhaps go to the
right. Thank you so much, sir. If you have any questions,
I just wanted to say a couple of things. Was my video visible throughout? I was not sure.
Yes, sir. Yes, it was.
Okay. And I'm really sorry. I think some of it was technical. So in case there is any doubt that you may have, or if it has made you more confused, you can please ask questions and perhaps I can shed some light on it.
Yeah, right. Maybe our participants can ask questions. I don't see any question in the Q&A box. You can go ahead and ask your questions now.
I have one. I have a very small query to Dr. Tandon, if I can come in.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Yeah, very good talk, Dr. Tandon. Congratulations, beautifully done. And it's so technical, but you've made it very simple. I'm talking from my perspective only. Of the 2 patents that I've already filed, one is on, we working on biocementation and the sand consolidation from a bacteria that we got it from the cave. And that technology has already been applied in all India, where we have, around 3,000 liters of microbial culture incorporated into the technology that we've developed. And my students are at IIT Guwahati. And they have got a grant of 2.7 crore from All India Limited to work on it. But the point is, we had filed this application. The application number is already granted. Its examination is done, I suppose. The real progress has not happened for 3 years. Now we have signed a MOU with the Petroleum University in Gujarat. Okay, with this technology, they are going to take it up and expand it into larger context. Now, what happens? Because by now, as we have applied the technology to the field, people have come to know what exactly the technology is, but the patent has not come yet. If somebody else files on the same thing, because we could not hide it for a long, it's become very obvious to others what is working there, how we have worked. These 3 students are always on the job at IIT Guwahati, and with so much of money, the work is going on. What happens? Somebody else files and they get granted before us, because we could not just be hiding this, because we have to take it to the field with the money that you've got.
So 2 things. Even if somebody has not filed for a patent, they're just exploiting your invention, you can still, now your right will come into existence only after grant. Till there is no grant, there's nothing you can do. But under the law, you can sue for damages from the date of publication, from the date of publication of your application. Number 1. This is a scenario where somebody has not applied for a patent, but is just using, because I can use your invention, exploit your invention, misuse, abuse it, even without a patent granted. So this is, in that case, you are still secure. The moment your patent is granted, from the date of publication, you can ask for damages, you can sue that person. This is the legal remedy. Number two, now if suppose somebody copies your invention at this stage and files an application for the same, then you can launch a pre-grant opposition. There are pre-grant, post-grant revocation. At any stage you can challenge that patent, and your grounds would be that either whatever has been filed by the other person is identical to your innovation or is based on your innovation, and that second application by your competitor was made after the publication of your invention.
Okay.
Or even if suppose somebody, this was the case of prior claiming in my novelty slide that I did not speak about. Suppose your application is filed, but it is still not published. There's that 18-month period in between, and somebody else comes and say after 6 months of your filing, somebody else files identical application. You can still challenge that person under a pre-grant opposition and say that he has basically copied on something which was filed before me, whether it is published or granted, that is immaterial, but it was filed by me first, so I was the prior claimant. This is prior claiming. So anybody who claims it subsequently is out. And if your publication has also taken place, then of course it is a published document, then the patent office should catch it. If the patent office does not catch it, then you can again launch a pre-grant opposition. So in all these three cases, you are secure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. You know, the point is, I think we have disclosed it so much with the application of the technology, which is already being on field. So I'm just worried, you know, because these three kids who have been working so very hard and so much money, they should not lose it. You know, for me, it does not hold so much of importance, but for them, definitely. Yeah, thank you. That means we stand secure.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi and Dr. Tandon. We're waiting for some questions. Sir Tandon, I just have one small question. Now, seeing as it is that innovation and invention are two terms that are inextricably tied to patent. So I'm just wondering if these terms are consistent, like the legal definition of these terms are consistent across borders, or are they also subject to territory?
They are different. So first thing is that our Patents Act talks, if you're talking about legal definitions, our Patent Act only talks about invention. The word innovation is not used anywhere in the Act. So the legal term that we use is invention. And by invention, it defines it as anything which is new, involves an inventive step, and is capable of industrial applicability, industrial application. So three criteria: new, inventive step, and industrial application. Now, and then section 3 says what are not inventions. So you may have an innovation. Suppose I have developed a new form of a drug, for example, a polymorph or a salt of a drug, but that will not be considered as an invention under the patent law of India. Again, suppose I have a computer program, a software, that will not be considered, that might be an innovation. Of course, every computer software, the Microsoft OS that comes with your Windows computers, or the Apple OS that comes, iOS, everything is a new innovation. But that will not be considered an invention within the laws of India for certain policy reasons. Now, this is India centric. There is a treaty by the name of TRIPS, WTO TRIPS, trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. Because of that WTO TRIPS, about, you can say, majorly 70–80% content of different patent laws, different definitions are the same. But still, there are differences. For example, in USA, you can get a patent over a genetically modified animal or a genetically modified plant. You can get a patent in USA. So they had a case called Harvard Onco mouse, a mouse developed by Harvard University, which carried an onco gene, cancer carrying gene. But in India, you will not get a patent. So for US patent law, a genetically modified animal or a genetically modified plant is an invention. For Indian patent law, it is not. It may be an innovation, but it is not a legal invention. So even though, because the point is, even though because of WTO TRIPS, your major content of patent laws is same, but there are considerable differences also in the definition of inventions in different jurisdictions, and invention and innovation is also not the same within our patent law also.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Tandon. I can see a few questions here.
Yeah. I can read, yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
So I think there is the traditional knowledge held and practiced by a community can be considered as an invention by the community. Can a community apply for patenting the traditional knowledge? And the short answer is no, because traditional knowledge by its very definition is something which is already existing. So a traditional knowledge in itself, as I said, section 3P of our Patents Act, it says it is not an invention. So traditional knowledge cannot be protected under patent law. There are international treaties, different governments, particularly in India, Brazil, China, in the developing countries, that is, they are working for an international treaty to protect traditional knowledge. But so far, for the last 15-20 years, there has been no result. We don't have any law over it, but you cannot get a patent for a traditional knowledge. You can develop it into something of your own, and then perhaps get a patent over the invention that you have, which is traditional knowledge plus your labor, something added by you, but not on traditional knowledge itself. And second question is, Meghalaya is blessed with root bridges. Has there been any attempts from those with traditional knowledge of creating these root bridges? Seek as a whole of India are aware of these amazing root bridges. This root bridges I'm not aware of. I don't. I'm not aware whether any such attempt has been made to protect these root bridges, but you definitely cannot get a patent over the same.
All right. So I think
I just had one on the root bridge, Dr. Tandon. These root bridges are very, very sturdy kind of a traditional way of, if you see these bridges, which basically are extension of the roots of typical, plants. These are there, and there has been a lot of research. A group came from Germany to me, and these technologies are developed in parks in Germany. Okay, and there is an engineering group who had come. They wanted my part to be played here, because they wanted to take up some part of how these roots basically develop and what are the promoters of this very sturdy growth. I rejected this, and they had gone to a National Biodiversity Board, okay, National NBA authority, and they probably tagged with somebody local here. I really don't know. I think somebody is vouched to help them out, but this is something very, very sad. Actually, people don't realize what you're talking about now. I had declined them that I'm not going to be part of it. But then NBA has taken up the application, and somebody is vouching from Meghalaya. I really don't know who's doing it, but these are knowledges which are there. But as you know, we have done it for chili in Sikkim College of Dalle Kursani. It's something like Bhut Jaloki of Assam, very odd chili. It's come under GI. Okay, now people in Darjeeling are fighting it over, because this chili was basically from Darjeeling, and people took it to Sikkim, but they somehow managed to get it GI. Okay, this is through the NEC. There is a small offshoot of NEC. I don't remember what it is. But can these root bridges also be coming under a GI, because they are very, very specific to Meghalaya, apart from some of the countries in Malaysia they have, in places like Malaysia they have.
If an argument can be made that these are the result of the particular geographical soil, the particular geographical attributes of that soil, the trees, that only those kind of trees perhaps have that strong, sturdy root bridges, then yes, you will have to show some kind of a rational connection with the particular geographical area. So then it can be protected by as GI. But if that is something which can be replicated anywhere else in the world also, if that same plant can grow with the same strength anywhere else also, then it might be difficult. But at the same time, it is something definitely which can be treated as a biological resource and TK. So even if access is granted to foreigners, I think that should be on the basis of some hefty royalty amounts that Government of India, or at least the state of Meghalaya, should be seeking, because that is the whole process under your Biological Diversity Act, the BDA. So BDA says that National Biodiversity Authority can grant approvals, yes, but there has to be an access and benefit sharing. Access means that there has to be a confirmation or approval from the local government, and benefit sharing, that the foreign party which is accessing these resources, they have to share some kind of compensation Even if they apply for a patent over it, they improve upon it and apply for a patent, they can perhaps give you ownership, part ownership, or they can share royalties from whatever monetary use they are making of it. So that also perhaps should be explored.
Yeah, thank you. I think these root braces are very interesting, and I hope somebody takes up, the biological entity of it. It's very, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that actually reminds me, there's a couple of things that I would have liked to say. I think there's one more message. Can a new food product developed be patented? If it qualifies the criteria of novelty, inventive step, and industrial applicability, yes. Agricultural methods are not patent eligible, but food products can be, as long as they have novelty, inventive step, and industrial applicability. So if you satisfy those criteria, the answer to Dr. Grace's question is that probably yes, if you qualify the criteria. Now, before I end this, a couple of points. I think first of all, I was told that there are a lot of science students also who are attending, and I was looking at the profile of St. Anthony's College. So you are offering those BSc courses in computer science, physics, chemistry, mathematics, and biochemistry. So I would advise, perhaps recommend, some of you can actually take up career in research, in science research, or also in the field of patents. There's a huge scope. Science people, I think, are most suited. It's not an absolute statement, of course, but science people are most suited to understand the nuances of patents. We need to have considerable research with regard to our traditional knowledge. I remember there are some of my friends in Delhi University who are working on geographical indications and TQ of the Northeast. So we need more and more people, because there's a lot of wealth in our bioresources and traditional knowledge in parts of the country which we are not really aware of, the knowledge systems we are not aware of. First thing. And second, that there's a patent agent examination which is held by the government of India. So all the young people who are attending, even the professors, the eligibilities that you need to have a science degree, a bachelor's degree in science or technology. A law degree is not required. It's the completely, so you have to pass the patent paper, you have to study patent law, but the eligibility is that you have to be a science person. And there has been at least here in Delhi, in Bombay, there has been a great rise in awareness. A lot of science people, PhDs in science, MScs, they are sitting for this examination, which is held once every 2 years. It was supposed to be held in 2020 also, but got postponed because of the pandemic. And number three, even in economics, in social sciences also, there is a lot of scope for research in patents. So there is something called economic analysis of patents, economic analysis of benefits of patents. And we are doing some electronic litigations in our firm. They're called standard essential patent litigations. And a very, very unfortunate part, or something which always disturbs me, is the fact that we hire people from Stanford University, from UK universities, US universities, who do analysis, economic analysis of what should be the licensing mechanism and what should be the fair price for that particular patent. These are all fields which are developed in the West to a large extent, but we don't have an Indian scientist, an Indian economic expert analyzing this for our firm or for our rival firms also. So all this entire space in India is occupied by foreign scientists as of now, largely from Europe and US. And perhaps there should be, I'm not aware if St. Anthony's has an economics department. There should be economic analysis of patents, economic analysis of benefits of traditional knowledge. These kind of researches are happening in the West, and they should perhaps be replicated in India also. So across the streams, science, social sciences, economics, perhaps we need more awareness, more exposure to IPR in general and patent law in particular. So it's a good avenue for a future career prospects also, especially for science students. So that's about it. That's all I had to say.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Tandon. I thought that was a fantastic session. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I'm sure all participants.
I hope it was too technical, and I was a bit worried that it was getting technical.
No, that's all right, sir. If I may, I was just going through your profile, and then I went through your articles. There you can see in the chat box, see the love from everyone. I love the session. Now, I was going through, some of your articles, and this is for attendees. There is a very interesting blog, which I just came to know yesterday. It's called Spicy IP. Spicy IP, Decoding Indian Intellectual Property Law. So for any of our students who may be interested, again, it's called Spicy IP, Decoding Indian Intellectual Property Law. All right, so that's all we have time for. Thank you so much again, Dr. Tandon. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, sir. We hope to be associated with you again soon.
That will be a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We will take a 5-minute break. After that, we will be joined by Dr. S.R. Joshi. So please come back a little before, let's say 12:10, 11:10, sorry.
Right.
Welcome back. We will now hear from Dr. S.R. Joshi, but I cannot see him anywhere. I cannot see his panel. Dr. Joshi, sir, are you there? Let's just take a minute. We'll just take a minute. We'll wait for Dr. Joshi to join in. Hi, sir. We were worried there for a while. Sir, you can unmute. Unmute, yes.
Oh my goodness me! I'm in somebody else's house. I'm extremely sorry. I'll go dark, I suppose. You know, this is what technology can do to me, and it's so embarrassing actually. When my term came and the power suddenly went off, and I have an inverter, it's not working right now. Okay, Dr. Tandon is left.
I believe he's still here, sir. He's still here, but allow me to introduce you.
I'm sorry. Please pardon me for this. It was just out of my reach.
All right, sir. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. S.R. Joshi. I am sure he's not a stranger to any one of us, really, who's attended orientation programs or refresher courses. Dr. Joshi, we've all sat, I think, most of us sat for your lectures and loved them. Dr. Joshi is a senior professor in the Department of Biotechnology and Bioinformatics, NEHU, Shillong. Now with the teaching and research experience of 32 years and counting, I believe, 136 research publications, 12 authored books, 22 supervised and awarded doctoral candidates. It is perhaps not an exaggeration to say that Dr. Joshi has contributed tremendously, and he is a maestro in the field. As I said, Dr. Joshi is not a stranger to any one of us, and especially not to St. Anthony's College. He's been associated with the college in numerous occasions, but the most memorable of which, I am told, was his stint as faculty in the Department of Biotechnology, St. Anthony's College, at its inception. Dr. Joshi, I'm so very happy to welcome you. I should say welcome home. And Dr. Joshi will be talking on IPR and biodiversity. So, sir, I hand over this session to you.
Can I get 2 minutes? My power is back. I'm in somebody else's house. Can I just get back in 2 minutes and do that?
Else's house. Okay, sir.
Yeah, just 2 minutes. I'll get back. I'm so sorry.
All right, sir.
Yeah, because I got the connection, you know.
It's okay.
It's been an experience of one time.
Let me just check and
yeah,
ask.
You can just have one interaction with Dr. Tandon.
How many of you have sat for Dr. Joshi's lectures? In NEHU, maybe. Any one of our participants, wait. Maybe orientation program, or Dr. Daman Bhalingdo, you have, obviously. Anyone else? If you've had the pleasure of, hearing Dr. Joshi speak.
Yeah, am I audible, Dr. Amanda?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, you are.
Okay, so let me start with the little bleach. Yeah, I think Selvi.
Okay.
Okay, thank God, things are working. Good morning. I think I'm very sorry for this little glitch. I'm extremely sorry. It was out of my reach or control. I think we had a wonderful session with Dr. Tandon, if he's around. And the technical part of it that is covered is just too good. But what I've prepared is, I've not prepared too much of technicalities here, because as a student of science, I understand, it's just not easy to get into patent and patent regime that easily. But then once you start working and then you file yourself one particular patent, then you realize that it's not an easy job. The kind of queries that comes in, clarification that comes in, and the time it takes, and what kind of work that you're doing, or a process or product that you have, and what can be filed as a patent, is something that you got to be doing it yourself. Be it geographical indications that we talk about, or GI rights, or the copyright that you have, and somebody brought in the traditional knowledge which cannot be patented because it's not individual, it's a community that is involved. But the root bridges is something that we'll have to seriously think about in terms of Meghalaya, because the idea, the technology that's there is already lost, but then we need to protect them. It's not here in India. They have gone abroad, and people have really taken this idea to build it in terms of aesthetic, beautification of places all around. My talk is designed basically for students, okay? And what I would do is I'll just run through some of the fundamentals of biodiversity, then come to intellectual property right with reference to the plants, because I'm working on microbes, and I have done at least 2 patents that application has been granted. But then I'm not going to go into the micro, because which would be relevant for the student as of now would be the agriculture. So let's begin this. I'll begin with very, very fundamental, and believe me that I have designed it for the students, and slowly I come up to the level of intellectual property right with reference to plants. Now, if I'm to given to choose this 2 frame, and somebody says that I could choose one of these and put it in your parlor, I don't know which one you're going to be choosing, but I have my own choice. These are 2 frames, if you see. And similarly, if somebody is telling me to choose one of the 2, the one on the right and the left one looks more beautiful than the right. But if you look at its science, may not be very, very correct there. But we have our own choice. If we are to ask to choose one from the 2 frames that you have, one on the right and the left, we would again choose one of them. But what I mean by all this is there is diversity that you see in these 3 pictures that I have just shown. Is my voice audible and the pictures are visible, Dr. Amanda?
Yes, sir, you are visible very much.
It's visible too. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so why I showed this is, there's diversity in all these pictures that I have shown. So let's come to what is biodiversity. For a student to understand is that you see on Earth today, everything that has got variety today has to do something with the biodiversity. And why it is so important is because it is the essential for interdependence of all living things that we have in life. You cannot just be getting rid of one and keeping the rest and say that, okay, this is important for me, the other one is not important for me, and I don't want to keep it, because you really don't know what's needed, what's going to be needed in future. For example, if I remember my grandmother, when used to fall while playing when you were children, she'll just call us, and if there is a little injury that's been caused, she'll pluck one of those herbs from nearby, and she'll smash it on a palm and apply it. On the second day, the wound was almost healed. But today, if we have our children falling, we'll take them to some doctors or dispensary and have all the dressing done and the first aid done. But the point is, this first aid takes longer time than what my grandmother used to do, because the healing power much more. And today I know what herbs she was using. So what I mean is, for us, this herb was not giving us any food nor a vegetable, so we did not care about it. But I don't find it anymore here, because everything has gone concretized. The point is, everything seems to be important, and we must keep it. Now, if you look at scientists, they have identified more than 2 million species today, and it's going on. Now, there are tens of millions which are still remaining unknown, of course, barring the destruction that we have. There is still too many to be identified. And if you look at microorganisms, we have hardly done 1% of the identification of the microbes that we probably have existing on Earth. We have not identified them. And if you have not, or I have not identified, I also don't know what value they have to us. The result is, you have the tremendous variety of life on Earth is made possible by complex interactions. This cannot be, just existing in isolation or in seclusion, but everything that's there, be it microscopic species like algae, fungi, bacteria. And today we understand how important these viruses are today. And with the pandemic coming in, we know how viruses have become so very important even to our existence. Now, if you look at the component of diversity for children, students who are here, we have there are different levels of diversity. The first one is diversity of genes. Look at these beautiful pictures of the dogs. You have Chihuahuas or Beagles or Rottweilers. They're all dogs for us, but they are not the same, although being dogs, because their genes are different. And if you look at this, we call it as diversity of genes or genetic diversity. Now, if you look at these three living beings, be it a monkey of a sake variety or a schema, or you talk about the meadow beauty, the flower that you have, they are species. And these kind of differences that you have existing between one to the other, we call this as species diversity. And look at different locations, different niches, or the tropical rainforest. They are all ecosystem, and each one is different because they have their own set of species which are living there. And this is what we call as ecosystem diversity. So there are three levels actually. We have genetic, species, and ecosystem. But the point that we are talking about today, be it in an intellectual property right or protections, or we want this to be kept as conserved or sustainable utilization, what is caused is there has been loss of diversity, especially the living beings. But why has this happened is because we have picked them, we have logged them or plucked or even hunted them. These them that I'm talking about are the animals, the trees, the flowers, or the fishes, or anything that you have, anything that is living, and we find that they have got some utility, be it for food or some other utility. We have really taken them out. And why do we do it? Because either we take them for medicine or take them for souvenirs, or it's a status symbol that I have some animals hide that's been hanging in a parlor, or we use them for building material or use them for food, which is the primary. But in all cases, we have contributed to the destruction of this biodiversity. Result is, if you look at the overall, if there are, for example, 100,000 different species on Earth that are existing, it's just a calculation that we have. And if the extinction rate is just about 0.01% every year, which is happening even more than that, we are going to be losing around 10,000 species, which will go extinct every year. So can you imagine how many species are going to be going extinct by the time you finish your graduation? You start BSc or graduation first year and you finish 3 years. So you would be losing 30,000 species by the time you just finish your graduation days. Now, why is this loss so very dangerous? Is that because this biodiversity that we talk about has intrinsic or inherent value. And this value is something that is independent of its own value, but it's valuable to somebody, someone else, anything else. For example, the value is you have some flowers at home. Are they valuable to you? Maybe they are. Are they valuable to others? The flowers being there by itself, philosophical concept why we take good flowers and we have a good garden, maintained at home, is probably it's something, it has got very, very inherent value there. But biodiversity also has a lot of utilitarian value. That means the value of something has a meaning for somebody else, meeting needs out of it. So it's meeting somebody else's need. And these can include the goods or the services that they provide, or even the information that you have. We can do science today is because there is biodiversity. We are able to get out to some kind of new inventions, new discoveries. Probably you're looking at a new drug. Now, when you come to know about the new drug is, at least you'll have to have the fundamental molecules which are known existing, and they have a certain activity against certain group of organisms where we are looking at. And you take that molecule, characterize, and take it to the lab for certain addition and deletion and modification of that molecule, which may become more effective. But then the idea has to come from the nature, because the basic molecule has to be learned from the nature itself. Now, there are direct uses that we have. The direct uses of biodiversity, of the resources that we have, is for food, or use it for building materials, or use it for power or fuel, or you have paper product that you have, or the fibers. We have the clothing or the textile industry that's run. Industrial production, different kinds. I talked about certain antimicrobials. They are also industrial products, or the waxes, or the rubbers, or the oils, or medicine. Now, this medicine is also, we talk about the developed medicine, or even the traditional medicines. Now, in terms of food that you look at, what kind of plants are there, how they contribute to us today. Most people, I mean the population of the world, will rely on about 20 types of plants, and only 3 to 4 are staple crops. If you look at what do we eat, whether you eat atta, rotis, or rice, or you have pulses, how many you can have? You want to go for a meal, either you want to have atta or you want to have rice. So how many are there? There are just 2. It could be just the alternative. All of us are taking one of the 2. So this diversity is very, very critical. for developing new strains. So whatever we have today, you want to develop a new breed of rice or a new breed of wheat, but then this has to come from something which is pre-existing. And that has to suit the environment wherever you are growing. But the idea is the source of the new crop is always the existing one. We look at building material, we look at paper products of oil. It's all the biodiversity and the natural resources which are available with us. We talk about fiber, be it a plant fiber or animal-based fiber, but it's all biodiversity that we talk about. You look at industrial products, these are few which are just, as I said, I'm going to be talking more on plant. So these are more of a plant originated or even animal originated. The product and the end use you talk about either the cork or rubber or shellac, or you can have a candida wax or a jojoba oil or carmine dye, which you use even for staining purposes. They all have their source and evolution or extraction that is happening from nature, and that could be plants or even animals. Now look at medicine. Somebody talking about traditional medicine yesterday. 80% of the people in developing countries use plants as a primary source of medicine. That's what we talk about as traditional medicinal practitioners. Okay. Now 50% of the 150 most prescribed drugs have their origins in biodiversity. As I mentioned, you talk about penicillin. Where does the penicillin come from? Just imagine that penicillium was not there and Penicillium notatum was not identified. Probably this antibiotic would not have come to us. You talk about streptomycin, where does this come from? So everything has its own. There are the basis of very many drugs we have. I'm not going to go into this. You look at antibacterials or treatment as a purgative or a skin treatment or relaxants or sedatives or painkillers for hypertension or malaria or asthma, or you have a cardiac or leukemia. They all have a source. And these sources are the drugs which are identified as a natural product. This is natural product chemistry. This natural product chemistry comes invariably from plants. Okay. Now we have a lot of indirect uses, which we call as an ecosystem service. A very important role in regulating global processes, atmosphere and climate. And in today's world, when we talk about climate change, they say if you cut one tree, plant 10 saplings. Why is it so? Because the ecosystem service that you are deriving from plant cannot be just ruined. We cannot just cut and leave it there. We'll have to get them to regeneration. We talk about soil conservation or water conservation or nutrient cycling or pollination or seed dispersal. There is a very big group I'm involved in terms of the Cymbidium and Dendrobium. And the chemical ecology of these is so very interesting. Interesting in a sense that the kind of insects that visit this particular flower at a particular point of time, and these plants have a very, very specific kind of pollinators. And if this volatile production is disturbed, you would not have these pollinators coming, and the plant would not definitely generate seeds, and there cannot be further productions. It does not end there. These pollinators which come based on the volatiles produced by the flowers also has a reaction or interaction with what kind of microorganisms are associated with this particular plant and what kind of microorganisms gets attached to that. So these microorganisms and the metabolic pathway has a contribution in terms of generating elicitators, the molecules for production of these volatiles. So what I mean is biodiversity is just not one end process. It's a multifaceted, too many organisms, just for pollination, a plant, a microorganism or a fungi or a bacteria, which has to have interaction. Now you talk about control of agricultural pests. We talk about biopesticides today, the genetic library that we're creating today, inspiration and information. I don't think people who have gone into doing so much research and generated so much of information if life forms are not so very different. We have scientific and educational importance. We all know. Okay, we have tourism and recreation. Why people go to certain areas as a tourist spot, contours that are there, but there are also very specific kinds of plants. Now let's talk about root breezes. Why people are thronging to root breezes and visiting those root breezes? The number of footfalls that you have on those root breezes is there is a now restriction that at one point of time this many numbers of people cannot be allowed on top of the breeze because the breeze may collapse. Why people are thronging is because they really want to see what are these breezes. That's a tourism. all biodiversity. We have cultural value, we have spiritual, it also has a strategic value in terms of generation of food and resources. Now, if you look at the atmospheric regulation in general, biodiversity is very, very important, because if you look at biodiversity, this is the photosynthetic biodiversity, which basically creates an oxygenated environment. If there is no oxygen, you can imagine what would happen. Okay, right? Now, if there is a rise in atmospheric carbon dioxide level with global climate change, who is going to be rescuing? Who is going to be absorbing this carbon dioxide? Who is going to be sequestering or the sequestration of carbon dioxide? These are all plants we talk about. We talk about marine plants, which are phytoplanktons, because they are the largest source of carbon dioxide absorbing source. So if we ruin those phytoplanktons in a marine environment, our carbon dioxide level is not going to be going down, and that will, what it is going to do is it's going to raise the temperature of the earth. You have melting of snows, we have permafrost vanishing, and there are a lot of consequences that we have. Now, in terms of climate regulation, look at this picture, which is so beautiful. You must have seen it when you visit certain places here. The forest and other vegetation modify climate. All of us know, because the sun reflectance that's there, the water vapor that's released there, the wind patterns which is there, the moisture loss you have. You talk about wind breaks in desert areas. These are all plants which play a very, very important role. Okay, they maintain a humid environment. Half of all rainfall in Amazon basins, for example, is produced by local forest atmosphere cycle. So you cut the forest, the rainfall is going to reduce there, because it's all maintained by the forest itself. Now, if you look, is these areas that are there, they are known to filter excess nutrients and trap sediments that would otherwise impact the neighboring marine and aquatic areas. That means they do a lot of filtration so that these companies do not reach the marine and the aquatic areas, so they don't allow it to be hampered by their runoffs. Okay, the other services that they offer in terms of the wetlands, you have minimized damages from waves and floods, because they feast, which will later move into the larger water bodies. They provide habitat for many birds, fishes, and shellfish. That means anything that is present here has a role in terms of biodiversity. But you talk about nutrient cycling, this decomposition process would not be happening if there are no living beings, okay, because the soil has to renew, it has to come back to fertility. And now these decomposers are very important, be it algae, fungi, bacteria. Algae may not straight away go into decomposition, but their growth is definitely going to be using the process of transformation of nutrients there. I talked about pollination and seed dispersal. If there are no insects, this would not have happened, because if you look at it, the overall, 30% of human crops would depend on free services of pollinators, or this, if you release the pollinators, or if you destroy the pollinators from those natural habitat, the replacement value that is going to be costing human is in terms of billions of dollars per year. But the natural pollinators are doing, and we don't realize that we have to invest any money there. Now, why I say they are source of information and inspiration is, you talk about the biomimicry. There are certain insects which will be laid on a plant, you'll not be able to identify until it moves. This is biomimicry. It's got its own beauty. We have applied biology. We come with the latest invention and discoveries. We have medical models. Today, I'll just come to one of them. Be it education or scientific research, everything is based on the natural resources that we have it. Okay, or medical model. I talk about how research has come into being. Today, the hibernating bees have become very, very important models of study. The energy use and the entropy system that is there has been used in treating trauma patients or kidney disease or osteoporosis. So a beer has become a model, and their metabolic pathways are being studied to manage this kind of human ailments and diseases and cases, conditions. Now, cultural values it has, because every community, every tribe, we talk about traditional knowledge, traditional 1,000 traditions, and these traditions are all driven by what we call as the biodiverse group of plants or animals that they know or they use, or that are existing there in the vicinity. Aesthetic beauty. 2020 has not been a year. It would look very empty, but then otherwise you would find a lot of people visiting this, because it's because of aesthetic beauty, and this beauty is just not driven by the natural structures, but it's because of the living being. you talk about community is more resilient, I would say yes, because there is a lot of constancy that's there. There's a lot of resistance to perturbation or changes or disturbance, which the natural community would always bring about. I'm talking about plants and the natural, apart from the humans. There is also renewable, because it can renew and eco-restore itself in terms of repairing damages that we are responsible for causing. Not all species are critical to an ecosystem function, but they are there because they will feel a lot of redundant roles. All of them cannot be keystone species. Now, what is a keystone species? Is one species which is so very important controlling the ecosystem of a particular place or a habitat. For example, why tigers are so important is, if why we say tigers need to be preserved, we know why it needs to be preserved. Otherwise, tigers are not friendly. The moment a tiger finds me, it's going to eat me up. But the question is, you remove tigers, there are a lot of other populations which will grow uncontrolled. That's why the ecosystem is going to be imbalanced. That's why we would say the tiger is a keystone species there. They're very important. And we all should be concerned about biodiversity, we know, because be it protections or the right that we have or intellectual property that we talk about, everything is disappearing at alarming rate. And we have a situation where we may be left with only few that we are using. And if they are gone, we do not have any gene pool existing for future. Now, the various threats is that we have destruction or cropland that we're introducing. There is a climate change that we have, that a lot of exploitation of the most resourceful species that we have, or a species choice we have, which we call as high-yielding varieties. They are all causing threat to biodiversity. We can protect biodiversity. One is stop over-harvesting. You will have to protect the habitats, and also bring in what we call as the Endangered Species Act. Now, in India, we are fortunate that we are also one among the hotspot biodiversity zone. But the question is, how are we efficiently protecting it and the habitat? Because there are a lot of species which are still to be documented. Are we seriously taking it up? It's one very, very important. I think we have to give a lot of importance to this. To sum it up, biodiversity and its value is the most ecologically sustained form. That's why nature is sustaining itself. It maintains soil fertility. You would understand. It optimizes the management of soil in belts areas. It optimizes in terms of not optimizing failure, but sustenance, I would say, because there is insurance against crop failure, means the diversity. If one crop does not work, probably we can bring in another crop to replace that. Maybe the productivity would vary, but we still have alternative. It will optimize labor availability. I'm not talking about the human labor, but even the natural labors which are there. Pollinator is one of the labors that is available in proliferation of cropland. Okay, we have a diversity of range of food ensures nutritional balance, because you can shift from one to the other, and you can have a combination of foods. It can provide a range of fodder to the cattle, keeping them healthy, because you could shift from one fodder plant to another. It helps to control their farm economics, and especially the women folks, because they are the ones who are attributed or are the ones who are held responsible for maintaining even the biodiversity and the gene pool or the seed banks. Okay. Now, if I come to intellectual property right, having learned about biodiversity, does it itself link to biodiversity? If we ask ourselves, I think to a great extent, yes, it does. But I'll just be browsing through some of the slides in terms of the agricultural, produce and the new varieties that is coming. Now, what has happened is, there is advent of new biotechnologies, new development, new, what we call as technology being brought in terms of improvement, and the capacity to identify and incorporate exotic genetic material into commercial products has forced the pace of change in industry, in intellectual property system. What I mean by this is, there has been changes. We talk about genetically modified organisms that are being brought in, although all of them are not allowed. But even in agricultural crop productivity, we are moving into a situation where there is more resilient variety, more stable variety, more robust varieties which are being continuously cultivated, and the ones which may not give us so much of productivity are now being neglected. And the point is, we are also looking at research and development, trying to improve on those which has happened. The green revolution is coming because we have high yielding variety. Now, what are high yielding varieties? They are varieties which produces more than when compared to the other ones. Resulting is, we have extensive commercial exploitation of genetic diversity. And this is catalyzed by research and development. for obtaining IPR, intellectual property right, and this will decide the future of our biodiversity. In the process, what will happen is, come to Indian scenario. When we talk about certain species which are being overused, which are being cultivated much more than the rest of them may get slowly lost. But then is that going to do good to us? I would say no. If you look at Indian scenario, mega biodiversity centers, we know that its record in agrobiodiversity is equally very, very impressive. There are 167 crop species, 320 species of wild crop relatives, and several species of domesticated animals. If you read this Kothari's publication on folio, you'll find these details. Now, it is considered, India as such is considered to be the center of origin of very many crop varieties, 50,000 varieties of rice, 1,000 varieties of mangoes, 100 varieties of paper, and so on and so forth. Just go on. It's not only plant, it's the goat or the sheep or poultry or buffaloes. It's there. It's a huge richness that we have in our country. And also, there are other several varieties of pigeon pea, turmeric, ginger. We talk about turmeric, the Lakatong variety, which has gone into so much of interest because the curcumin it produces is supposed to be the highest in terms of its content. So Lakatong turmeric is one area I think one has to even look at GI for its production. You never know, people may take it and there can be modifications, they may be grown, so you may lose its, is a Meghalaya and it must be continued to be grown and also be protected. So, we have contributed a great to the world agriculture. There are unlisted species of bacteria and fungi, I would say. We have 6,500 species of algae, 14,500 species of fungi, and so many, the lichens or bryophytes, and there are a lot of plant scientists in the audience. They would tell me better than what I'm talking about here. But what India has done is realizing the importance, the richness of biodiversity, as Dr. Tandon was talking about. In order to comply with the TRIPS, trade-related intellectual property rights, and the Convention of Biodiversity, it has passed a lot of Indian Act, the patent laws. There are a lot of amendments which have happened 2002, 2005, respectively. The idea is to protect our own biodiversity and it should not get lost. Now, these amendments are brought in because the patenting is very important, and the tenure of patent has now been extended to 20 years. So if you have patented a process or a product, it can be held by you for 20 years. After that, it lapses or it expires. Somebody else can take it. So there are certain modifications which has gone on to the benefit of the country and the people working there. Now, microorganism will be patentable as subject in India, which was not there after the amendment. But the question is, microorganism is I'm not going to be identifying or isolate a particular bacteria or a fungi and I say, okay, this is patentable, but what I have to look at it is the process it carries out and the product it forms, and then you can ask for patent, not just culturing one and go for patenting. Now there are new plant varieties will get plant breeders' rights certification in India. Now this is basically based on the UPO, which was a very old law of 1961. So India also has considered that plant breeders' rights has to be protected because there are new varieties of plant breeding that may have been generated. Now, earlier, India has passed a plant protection bill to develop, the system of its own if our country has developed some protection. And Dr. Tandon also talked about, the deposits that we have in our country. There are 2 certified depositories in Bangalore and Pune and Chandigarh. Now, what it tells us in terms of impacts of intellectual property right. Now, it is simply a tough task to offer an estimate of impacts on IPR on biodiversity. Can I just go for patenting everything that is biodiverse, a richness of plants, animals, and microorganisms? It's really a tough task because you basically would not be able to estimate this because we have not documented the entire resource we have. But the benefits of genetic diversity that you have are long-term and really predictable. You cannot. I just talked about one of the herbs that my grandmother was using. Today, I don't find it. But then now, that particular herb had certain molecules in it, which was so antimicrobial. That's why even if I had a cut here, and she applied it, the microorganisms were not able to grow in the oozing blood. Result is, when the microorganisms are not able to grow, it's not going to be causing more harm to the injured part, and they would get healed because the cells will regenerate very fast. But the point is that plant is lost. I don't see it anymore. I can identify it, but I don't see it anymore in the vicinity. The point is, we were not able to really predict its benefit there. Now, humanity as total shares a common ball containing around 20 cultivated crops, which sustains rather 90% of the calorie requirement or energy requirement. This is 1991 report. I think there must have been some change, but 20 are almost an approximate number. And these 20 crops that we talk about have been recorded to have originated in developing countries. Okay, right? Now, all these crops that we talk about are alarmingly vulnerable to pests and diseases. Okay, now for the continued survival, if there are pests and there are diseases, there will also be certain biocontrol mechanisms which are there in nature. So if we cull the or destroy the biocontrols, these diseases are going to hamper the plants, the crop plants, and they are going to be dying off. Okay, during this century itself, most authorities believe that a proportion of genetic variability of our maize has become extinct. So we do not have the exact record, but they're becoming more and more extinct. So the conservation and development of the remaining crop diversity is a matter which is of a vital global concern. If there are more crops which are going to be extinct, we will lose our resources, right? Now, I have another 10 minutes, I suppose. Yeah. When we look at the farmers, when they want to increase their sale, they basically would sow the seeds which are more commercially viable and they are more productive. Why not? Because everybody wants to be rich. There are also government policies and schemes which force them to adapt to certain seeds and new plant varieties, and they will not use the ones which they have been using for ages. The result, the new plant will find the place in the field and the old ones are going to be sidelined, and over a period, they may not have the sources existing anymore, okay? So that's an increase in commercial agriculture with very, very limited variety of crop plants. The intellectual property system, in the present scenario, encourages commercial agriculture that accelerates genetic erosion. Now, what I mean by genetic erosion here is, I mean that whatever varieties we have, the genetic diversity, that is falling trend. It's being eroded because we have become very selective, even in farmer's choice for a crop plant. Now, biotechnology research that is there today focuses on commercial agriculture and leads to demand for intellectual property protection with the same potential negative consequences for diversity. We talk about protection because if there is a new variety that's developed, it's going to be protected. The developer has the right for it, but in the process, it has a very, very bad impact, which you call as a negative impact on the genetic diversity. The entire diverse crops which are cultivated in the crop field has now been replaced by the new variety. So it's not really looking good for us, okay? Now, similarly, we are looking at uniformity. When we talk about uniformity, we also look at the stability of the new varieties that are developed. So they are going to be more sustainable. They are going to be more protective. Result, they are going to be replacing the existing one, okay? Now, these characteristics that we talk about in terms of agroecological environment, which the majority of the poor farmers live, what will they do is they are going to be moving out from the heterogeneous system where there are large variety of plants to more of a homogeneous system that's there, okay? The criteria of uniformity, as I talked about, okay, I'm not going to go into that, but there's a lot of concern that's going to be involved in this. In terms of greater uniformity means we have a grid revolution that has come in terms of success that is brought in, but it will bring more susceptibility to disease and loss of on-field biodiversity. That means with the new varieties being introduced, more productive varieties being introduced, we may ultimately lead to what we call as a monoculture or culture of one varieties and the loss of all the mixed culture that we are known to have, okay? Now, also, the multinational companies which are coming, they have indulged in privatization of genetic resources. They have been engineered, they have been patented by themselves. Now, they as all promoting what we call as a monoculture cropping. We have, terminator technology, for example, in cotton. Every time the farmer has to cultivate this cotton, you'll bring the seed and, grow this. The harvest is made. But the next time the cultivation has to be done, they'll have to go to the company to get the seed again. It's because the seeds are not able to be productive when the plant grows. And there is a technology that's engineered genetically, which we call as a terminator technology. They are not going to be growing anymore. Okay, so they are now completely dependent on those multinational companies for getting the seeds. Okay, Also, why we are not allowing more varieties which are engineered to be introduced is because we really don't know what's going to be the ecological consequence of that. So there's been so much of debate. We talk about whether you talk about the modified brinjal, cotton has already been introduced, but then the genetically modified brinjal is still a big topic that we talk about in scientific arena and on the government label. Okay, now we talk about again the improved varieties require more fertilizer and pesticide consumption, which the natural varieties don't need so much, and they will have a direct impact on whatever it is, be the floral, faunal, or microbial composition in the soil. They all change. You look at today one particular crop plant with so much of fertilizer being used. We are talking about soil fertility being lost, microbial population being lost, nutrient cycling being disturbed there. So it's all the consequences of the new variety development which has come through the property protection, because these varieties are protected. The companies have owned it. They are generating resources from there. They are generating money, and the farmers are using it because they also get more product from those varieties. Now, the successful development of biological diversity that we talk about will depend upon creative relationship that can be nurtured between two opposite poles. Now, what are these opposite poles that we talk about is, one is the formal innovativeness that we have, and the community system, something that is already existing in the community, the traditional, and the one that we talk about is the innovation, which is the new variety, which the breeders may bring in agriculture. That has to be very good relationship, have an active role to understand that we cannot definitely replace the existing one. Okay, right? Now this means the same thing in terms of the professional institution or experimentation results, which will have to look into these aspects. Ultimately, the result to condition out of these biogenetic resource, and also to improve the quality of human life, because whatever we are trying is to improve our life, and this
I think we've lost Dr. Joshi. Are you there? Sir, can you switch on your microphone? Yeah.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
I'm sorry. This is okay. I'm sorry. This is what, we have been talking. We had a very big international webinar, and then we talk about the connections, right? And this is what I'm experiencing this today. Yeah. Let me just come to, yeah, this is what that I was talking about. Let me come to this is, what is the role of IPR in protection of biodiversity? Just to collect, I've taken just one aspect, is that agriculture and the new varieties, the introduction, and they're replacing the traditional variety and the diverse varieties of crop plants or any agricultural plant that are being used. Now, if you have one such, item, for example, you see three people there, the claim is so very dangerous, even in agriculture. One says, this is my new invention. The other one says, it looks like mine. The third one is confused. What is this? This is what somebody was asking a question, even on root breezes and traditional knowledge. Now, traditional knowledge as such cannot be patentable. But the process, can we look at, I also do a research on the traditional foods. But if you look at the process where the traditional foods are produced and the product that they are formed, I can definitely patent them. Not as a traditional knowledge, but a process of using a particular culture to transform a substrate into product can be patentable. So this confusion that you see in the third person has to go on. One of the three has to really take this responsibility to do this. Now, this intellectual property and the various categories, I'm not going to talk. I think today morning we had Dr. Tandon putting it up, and yesterday also you must have talked about, from inventions to images to patent to copyright, it's there. But Indian Diversity Act has played a big role here, because we have mega diversity rich areas it has laws which is put in place to conserve biological diversity, regulation of acts and or sustainable use of resources, and advise the government on selection of biological heritage sites, which is so very important. These heritage sites also are going to be relevant in terms of not only anthropological but also biological resources. Okay, root bridges can also become heritage sites one day. You never know. Now, in terms of intellectual property rights and biodiversity, we have laws which says that it can limit. We can use the resource. Anybody and everybody cannot use. There is a law which is put in terms of transfer of technology. We can prevent a third party coming in and using, as I talked about, the root bridge technology has already gone as aesthetic engineering in certain European countries. So the idea is taken, but then there's nothing to protect it. We can't also blame them because they are not taking the plant. They're using some other plant to generate this kind of same aesthetic beauty. So the conservation has to be taken place. We'll have to really protect it. The sharing of benefits is very, very important. If you talk,
sir, I'm so sorry to disturb you.
Traditional knowledge, not as a whole, but if you
are you planning?
Can you see?
You want to share your screen because we can't see it.
Yeah. It's not been.
I think sir can switch off.
It's not. Oh my God.
Sir.
Okay.
And it's all right. I think, sir, you can switch off your video. I think you can switch off your video. Yeah, if it makes it better.
Just a minute.
Yeah.
Just a minute. I know. There's some problem with my net actually. Okay.
Yeah, we can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay. But I'm just not able to switch off my video. Where is this gone? Yeah, can you see me? Audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, you're audible. So you can turn off your video if your bandwidth is low.
Hello. Where it. You can see it now?
Yes, sir. Well, I can see it now.
Okay, I'm so sorry for this. Yeah, okay, right. Now, we have also something that we talk about, biopiracy. I think this is one biopiracy itself. So there are penalties where the government is late in terms of legislation, where there are good amount of fine and imprisonment, which is there. But even after that, things are not really going the way it should have done in terms of biodiversity and the protection that's happening. But the initial step towards making biodiversity a commodity evolved from United Kingdom. This has slowly led the companies selling registered seeds and monopolizing what we call as the breeder's right, and agriculture has come to be more dependent on them. We have genetically modified organism, and way back in 1972, the Andaman Chakravarti's Pseudomonas was the one which really started off the genetically modified organism, and it's patenting. It's being protected, no doubt, because of the process it was involved in, what you call as breaking down of xenobiotics. We have a story of cotton or soybean. There has been a lot of monopoly. There's income for pharmaceutical companies which are there. There are a lot of arguments which are there. And the indigenous crop which are being affected. There has been fight against this monopoly. We have a organization, NGO in Delhi called the Kalpa Bricks, who is fighting against all this patenting use of farm industry of microbes from India. The case of turmeric and the neem and basmati rice, got it back. We've retrieved them, and now it's patented in India. So we have a very typical case of turmeric and basmati. Now, Biological Diversity Act of 2002, Section C is very, very important in terms of India. If you look at it, you talk about any the connection is going off, it's coming on. I'm really sorry. It's been very embarrassing.
It's all right, sir. It's okay. We can see your slides now.
I'm really sorry. I'm feeling miserable today. Okay. So whatever the case is, I'm just talking about this, the resources obtained from India. So that's what we are talking about. Anything that is Indian, within India, we cannot take it. We cannot bring anything. We cannot take outside. I was talking about the okay, I'm right. I think I'll just try finishing this. It's been a massive failure. Okay, now I think this should be almost the last slide of mine. Biological diversity is the hallmark of life on Earth that all we know is the very backbone of sustainable development. Everybody knows this. But the intellectual property right that has come as a regime is encouraging commercialization of seed development, or even monoculture, or protection of new varieties, or whatever you talk about. Okay, right. In the process, what we have is we have modified organisms which are coming, as a result of which our biogenetic resources is getting lost, and this is irreversible. We may not get it back. And unless we really find a way where we can protect this, be it through seed banks, or we talk about gene banks and keep it, we may not have anything that is left for future for us to use. And for me, a good step to also consider side by side that these genetic resources has to be protected. That's what I wanted to say. But this has been one of the most unfortunate experience that I faced today. Okay, right, yeah, that is it.
So Joshi, can you?
I'm really sorry.
No, sir, I
but
got.
It's one of those unfortunate experiences.
I understand, sir, but you have not failed. I think network fails us sometimes. It's unreliable.
It's
but
never
I
happened this way.
got everything
The
from top to bottom. There are a few glitches here and there, but I got a few glitches, honestly, but I got most of it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, sir. And I could see two participants asking questions here. If you can just look at the Q&A box. One is from Sir Shiv Kumar.
Yeah. This, I think the word is very aptly fitted for my thing, is the onslaught of the internet today. They've really put an onslaught. That's Mr. Pradhan asking me, the old friend of mine. I mean, he's still my friend. Okay, he said, with the onslaught of genetically modified plants, according to you, if there is one creative measure as to how to maintain the genetic diversity, what could be it? See, I would not say the genetically modified plants have taken us on an onslaught, But let's also not forget that, unless we have higher amount of productivity, unless we have crops which are modified to really bear the brunt of climate change and productivity and losing fertility in the soil, will not meet the demand. So we are at the crossroad. Unless you introduce a new variety, will not meet the need demand for food. And if you really bring in the new variety, we will be losing the genetic diversity. So the only thing I feel is the genetic diversity should be maintained or kept in terms of, we have seed banks, we have gene banks where they can be stored, and scientists would have to look at if these varieties needs any incorporation of a good character, we'll have to take it from those banks and do experimentation to increase, but never on a monoculture. I'm never for a monoculture. It's really harmful. So we are right now not on an onslaught, but then we'll have to bring in, in India, I'll put you one, we do not want BT brinjal to be introduced, okay? We have not done it. We have BT cotton, but then all these fruits pack that come in the market and we buy in a very jazzy looking packs, they are all modified. We have seedless grapes coming in. What are they? They are all modified. They come from abroad and we are consuming it. But in the country, we have a lot of issue in introducing it. So it's also not fair. Our scientists have worked for it. We have our own legislation to not allow it to be introduced. We are not sure what would happen in nature. But then we have modified foods which have been coming into the country in terms of packed or processed food. So that's also need to be taken care of. I hope I understand. Okay. Now there's another one. Has there been attempts to apply GI with regards to the prevalence of Sosang in Meghalaya? I'm not sure about what is this Sosang. If Miss Amanda can tell me, yeah.
It's a fruit.
What is it?
I can't really. What is the literal translation of Dr. Bashira Masar is here, ma'am? You can help.
This is that we use for making pickles. The green ones which come just before the winter.
And red.
Yeah?
Green and red. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's not there. There has been no attempts. Let me tell you, my dear friends, students who are there. We Meghalaya or Northeast, we talk about, we fall in this mega diversity. There's so much to do in terms of GI. Okay, I just mentioned about turmeric. There is root breezes that we talk about. We have so much of resources. We have traditional ways of producing foods, processing food, fermented foods. But I don't think anybody has taken anything to do it. I think the government has to be proactive in this, right? I don't know if I was audible. I have lost connection, I think.
You are very much audible.
Was I audible, by the way?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
we have another question.
Okay, this is what. No, Sosang, definitely not. We also use it. We call it as a, achar. We call it, in my language, it's called kafal. I think Mr. Pradhan would to see. If that's the one which comes in green and then red, no, nothing has been done. Okay, there is, this has got another beauty. I can just bring in. This Sosang, when it is kept for making, is kind of a pickle. One of a teacher from Shillong College is doing now from microbiology, and there develops a certain kind of growth which is there, and this growth is of a fungus. Okay, we're just trying to do the research on that. It's not harmful, it's not poisonous, it does not produce any toxic, but that juice and the extract, if it is taken when this fungus is coming, it is highly medicinal in terms of anti-diarrheal. Okay, so shaking with this, now she's trying to do that work. Of course, the pandemic has stopped all that work. So these are important things. Now, what is the process? This Sosang, when this fungus comes in, and what transformation takes place there, and the byproduct which is there, that is curative, is something to look at it. This can even be patented because the process has not been worked out. Okay, leave aside Sosang as GI indicators. All right. Okay. Now, I think it's Bar David, the old friend of mine, writes. Yeah, okay.
Sir Kestali, you also had a very interesting question yesterday.
Okay.
Sir Kester, if you can just ask, maybe float that question again. Maybe Sir Joshi will have a perspective on it. We had a chat yesterday and it was quite interesting. So I was wondering, maybe you can ask.
Okay.
Sir Joshi. If not, then yeah, go ahead, sir.
Okay, there's one. Sir David is asking: has any of our Meghalaya originated crop received a GI indication tag? I'm not sure if turmeric has really received. Others, I have no idea. So and I'm also sorry to say that I'm not IPR expert, but then I do follow up in terms of microbiology and microbes. Yes, I'm very interested. because I have also filed few patents in the process that are involved. But in terms of plants, I'm not an expert, but I have really not read from the literature. No, any GI, tag that has been granted to Meghalaya. We are working with the same chili I talked with when Dr. Tandon was there. We call it as a Dalle Kursani, or the round chili of Sikkim, where it's going to be extended to Darjeeling because they want that also to be included, not from Meghalaya. I'm sorry. Okay. And then there is one from important plants, if you stop or reduce, can go to a great extent in lowering our dependence on GM crop. Of course, it can be, but that's a big challenge that we'll have to really look at. There is a generating area which we call as underutilized crops, underutilized plant. So now they are coming to the force. For example, millet is there. Okay, so those plants have been taken up to come as a supplementary cropping, which if taken. Okay, Sosang is elaeagnus. Yes. No, elaeagnus has not been taken. I understand. It's a little elongated fruit which is there. Yeah, right. Thank you. I think it's Cindy was saying that Sosang is elaeagnus. No, it's not been gone into GI indication of protection. Surely not.
Okay.
So I was thinking about Sophie. It's not Sophie. It's Sosang. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I think that's all we have time for. Dr. Joshi, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, sir, for sparing your time, for your preparation, for sharing your expertise with us. The past 2 days, I think, has been very helpful to those of us who are not familiar, maybe with the issues surrounding IPR. But our resource persons from Dr. Lingdo yesterday, Mr. B. Linkoy, of course, Dr. Joshi, Dr. Tandon have all brought us, I think, closer.
Yeah, I think there is one in chat box where, Miss Doctor, I think this should be Khasi Mandarin has given granted GI. Well, that's a new.
Sorry, sir? Okay, I think we've lost sir. I mean, he comes in and out.
I think Dr. Joshi was pointing out that Khasi Mandarin has been granted GI tag. And there's also one.
Okay.
Yeah. So Mimong Narang also.
I'm back, but then this. Okay. Yeah, Dr. Lasker says Khasi Mandarin has been given GI. That's information for me. That's a good news. Yeah, there's a citrus project by DBT where they are looking at Khasi Mandarin as one of the important crop. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
All right. So Joshi, if you can
hear.
Yes,
Amanda. I've been would I say you enter a cave and then suddenly you see somebody popping in. So my Nate also has been the same.
Can you hear me though, sir?
Okay.
All right. So we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, we can, but then it's break.
Right. So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your time. I think we've lost him. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you, Dr. Tandon, who is still here with us. To all of our resource persons who, like I said, they've brought the subject closer to us. And I think by now we can see that we have a little confidence in saying that we can take apart some of the components of IPR and its application. Thank you so much, everyone. Without further delay, I think we can move on ahead to Dr. Bashida Masar. She's the Associate Professor in the Department of Zoology and also a member of the IQAC St. Anthony's College. And I would now invite her for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Amanda. Can you hear me, Amanda?
Yes, ma'am. Loud and clear.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So the first remark that I am going to say is this, that with almost everyday online programs, I was thinking that I will not be able to absorb anything anymore. But that is not true, because with today's program, with today's session, I became aware of the rights intellectually. And I'm sure that this is true for all the participants. So on behalf of IQAC and the Department of Zoology, and the whole college, St. Anthony's College, I take this opportunity to thank the resource persons, Dr. Victor V. Tandon, advocate from Delhi, for sharing with us his expertise on IPR and patents. My sincere thanks goes to our very own Professor S.R. Joshi, Department of Biotechnology and Bioinformatics, NEHU, for letting us know and understand IPR with regards to our rich biodiversity. Of course, with hiccups here and there, but nevertheless, thank you so much, sir. We appreciate your sessions today. Then I thank Father Joby Joseph, director of the college, and Brother Albert Longlidkar, the principal of a college, for allowing us to organize this webinar yesterday and today. And I thank all the participants from across the country. Without the participants, this program will not be a success. Dr. Amanda, sincere thanks goes to you for being such a good host, such a good moderator. Thank you so much, Dr. Amanda. I also thank the person behind the scene, our own colleagues from the Department of Mass Media, and that is Nathaniel Majau, who arranged everything for this Zoom platform. A big thanks to all the organizers, Sir Gregory Karumnoit, the IQSC coordinator, then Sir Frederick Lamare, head of the Department of Zoology, then Dr. Daman Bhalingdo, who is here in the conference room with me, then there's Alban Mabanyang, Miss Karen Maisel, and Sir Jeremy Same from the Department of Zoology for the hard work. And we are such a team working together. Then I think I have thanked all. And if I forget anybody, please don't mind. I would like to wish everyone Merry Christmas in advance and a better year ahead. Evermore, better ever. Thank you once again. Thank you all. Amanda, over to you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am Bashida Masar. I can see, just let me address this just a second. I can see somebody asking, Sir Kesterly, he wants to know if we're getting the link for feedback form. Maybe Dr. Daman Lindo, if you can please answer that. Please unmute. Sir Daman, I think you're using your headphones. Or I don't know what's happening, but we can't hear you.
So Daman, perhaps you can use Ma'am Bashida's laptop. We cannot hear you, although it's unmuted.
Right. I think that's the feedback form. Sir Daman had just sent the link. So how much time are we giving? How much time are we giving our participants to fill up the feedback form, or they can do this?
No, they can do it online, so it's all right. You can just
do it online.
Yeah, click
so
on
then
it.
we can wrap this up, right?
Yeah, sure.
Dr. Daman.
I'll take leave. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everyone. My net seems to have been back on track. This is what happens when technology has to go wrong. Father Stephen used to tell us, when anything can go wrong, they can go wrong at the right time. So this is what has happened today for me. Anyway, thank you so much. But it's just being a break on and off.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Dr. Tandon. Thank you to all of our participants who've joined in. You stayed on 135. I can still see you there. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been lovely from all of us here in St. Anthony's. Have a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.